Fuck you.
And there is the return of Scott, the Savage Cheerleader. Hello, welcome to the Savage Worlds GM podcast. I'm your host, Jared Savage Daddy Gunning. This episode brought to you by Roll20.net, the world's largest virtual tabletop. Check them out today at Roll20.net. We're on the social medias. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook, SWGM Podcast. Watch, like, and subscribe on YouTube, the YouTube channel SWGM Podcast, and download, listen, and subscribe on iTunes, Savage Worlds GM Podcast. Tonight's topic, dice interpretations. And here to discuss it with us, Dave, the rules baby, Scott.
Caw-caw! Or whatever sound a seagull makes.
Stupid.
Justin, the intern.
I'll find you all where you live.
That's not creepy at all.
Some call him Jib.
I don't know what I'm doing here.
And the triumphant return of our long time and long absent host, Scott W., the Savage Cheerleader, a.k.a. Disembowel.
Здравствуйте, как дела?
Awesome. So tonight we want to talk about dice interpretation, why Savage Worlds is not a pass or fail dice rolling system, and also not just that, but also how it applies in the hobby as well. The general attitude being, oh, dude, make that roll. Okay, cool, you succeed. Oh, fuck, you failed.
An 82 on their dice roll to jump the Grand Canyon unassisted.
So let's real quick for the who's at home, for the newbies in the room. Oh, no, by the way, too, if you're watching the live stream on the YouTube channel, feel free to participate in the chat. Dustin Savage Intern is at the helm and manning your questions, and we'll post them here into the podcast. Let's go ahead and start just in case we have some newbies watching, and talk about Savage Worlds dice mechanics very quickly. You always roll a wild die, a d6. You always roll trait plus wild die, skill plus wild die, attribute plus wild die. Roll them together. You don't add them together. You keep the highest of the two. Basic target number is 4. You must get a 4 or higher to succeed, except in certain circumstances, when it comes to combat being one of those, you must overcome parry. There are some opposed rolls. But in general, you have to roll a 4 or higher, and you get 2 dice to do it. And not only that, dice explode. So when you roll the highest value possible on any one of those 2 dice, you pick that bitch up and roll it again, and it explodes. Now you add those 2, you pick it up, you roll it again, you get the highest roll again, it explodes. This is how you can end up killing a motherfucker with a single unarmed punch in Savage Worlds when you do strength plus D4 damage, and you just roll. We call that Savage Worlds happening all the fuck over you. Splooge of dice. Every increment of 4 or every increment of a success is called a raise in Savage Worlds. Rules Maven, anything to add? Did I leave anything out?
You know what? I'm not even going to try to plug all the holes in that statement of because you like.
I don't know what you're talking about. You were talking about plugging all of Jared's holes earlier,
right?
Hey,
Dave, don't ever correct me on air again, ever.
It's my fucking job. No, obviously the wild die isn't always a d6. No, right. You don't want to roll a wild die if you're rolling for extra.
All right, you know what? Give me a fucking break. The wild die is 99.9 fucking % of the time a fucking d6. That's pedantic.
Yeah, but don't say always and not fucking mean it, because our fans will call you on that shit, and they are. Chat is lit up with all the people going,
yeah, good. I'm glad. No, it's not always a D6. Just like I don't always use a fucking sword in fantasy. A ridiculous argument.
Okay, well, yeah, if you got an edge, okay.
Yeah.
Which break the rules by just so you know. Edges break the rules, thank you.
Although, I will just say, for all of the people in chat losing their fucking minds, if you have a problem with Jared saying it's always a D6, just go watch last episode, where he tells you when it's okay to break the fucking rules.
That's right.
It's never okay to break the rules unless Clint says so.
Well, you should have been here last week to say that shit, because that didn't end up in the show.
Oh, shit. Uncle Clint just smacked you.
Before we end up losing our licensure here, folks, okay, Jason Kennedy brings up even...
license for this.
We got a fan license right now. Anybody can have it.
The views expressed by the posts of the Savage Worlds podcast are, in fact, the opinions of the Savage Worlds podcast.
Just opinions. So Jason Kennedy says, even non-wild cards, extras, can ace on their damage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course they can ace on their damage.
Of course they can. That's how you fuck actual wild cards up.
Yeah, that's how like a villager with a pitchfork can wreck your day.
You know shit it can.
I love that guy.
You can set up that combat, man. You can spend weeks doing the little math formulas to make sure that it's balanced. And the very first attack will just one-shot a player if you roll well. It's just the way it is.
Now,
I think we've all seen it. We've all had player characters in the game who have no skill die in anything. They make an unskilled check with a D4 and a -2 and get like 8 raises.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to preface though, like one of the problems that I've been running into with some of my players that are coming from other systems is wrapping their head around the idea of Savage Worlds being universal. And by being universal, sometimes it works one way when you're in a specific setting. That's why we have setting rules. And sometimes it works a different way. For example, most of the time, 90% of the time, an extra's damage will ace. But if you're playing like with Triple Ace's pulp rules, an extra's damage in Triple Ace's pulp rules don't ace. They have a cap as to how far they can go.
Right, which setting rule, like we've talked about in the last few previous episodes. Yes, and you don't add a wild die to damage. Yes, that's a common, and that it bears bringing up because it's a common misunderstanding when you first start playing. Oh well, you add a wild die to everything. No, everything
it's a
except
strength test plus the weapon damage is the way a lot of people read that strength plus, and it absolutely is not. It's your strength die plus your weapon die. You don't get that wild die there.
Oh, I see Carlin's in rare form. Go ahead, Dustin.
Oh, which one? But Uncle Jared, I'm unskilled. My dice roll can't possibly be interpreted as something helpful.
Carlin, you keep it up. That's how you earn a spot on the show so that Jared can publicly spank you in front of all the audience.
So let's talk about, so dice interpretation as a GM. Let's talk about, first of all, the light side of it, the raises, how do you, I roll 3 raises on an agility check. What do you do with that? Do you just go, okay, great, you succeeded with the raise, moving on? Because I think interpretation a lot of times goes out the window. Narrative interpretation of the dice goes out the window the second we start combat, and it becomes its own little mini game of swing, hit, swing, hit, swing, hit. Yes, no, pass, fail.
It can. A lot of people run their games that way. You listen to enough. What we were just talking about, that shit that put you to sleep. Actual plays. When you listen to enough actual plays, that's how most of those games are run. They're very fucking stale and boring. Even the combat is stale and boring. Even in systems like Savage Worlds, it becomes a pass-fail, and let's just move on as quickly as possible.
And I think that comes down to how showmanshipy you are. If you are a showman as a GM, which is kind of part and parcel for why you signed up for the whole GM gig, is that you want to be the one talking the most at the table. That's the whole job. Then I honestly think at that point, maybe you need to work on your showmanship, because your players are going to go to sleep if all you ever do is say, that's a success, that's a failure. Yes, you hit him. Oh, you killed him. And there's nothing extra. Sooner or later, you're going to start losing players because they're going to go find someone who's actually fun to play with.
Well, I mean, it's to use an analogy, and this may not be an apt analogy, but it's kind of like going to a movie theater and somebody putting a blindfold over your eyes and just telling you the most boring monosyllabic way describing what's happening on the screen. You can be watching like a huge, blockbuster combat. You're sitting there blindfolded, and some guy goes, "Yeah, he just jumped." Well, what's going on? Oh, he jumped off the building. So he jumped off the building? Yeah, it's okay. He's got a thing wrapped around his waist. He'll be okay.
He did a pirouette. It's
one
a
of the more
tutu.
recent episodes of the Joe Rogan show where they had Bert Kreischer on, and he does that for a solid 20 minutes, describing a scene from freaking Game of Thrones, the book. And like Joe Rogan is actively snoring into a microphone. It's so dead. There's no life to it whatsoever. And it's one of those things that so often fucking happens at the gaming table because it's too goddamn easy.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, we're in combat, so story time's over, boys and girls. Now we're playing a dice game.
Well, providing interesting narrative takes work. It takes effort, and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not up for doing that, and I'm going to put a caveat here in just a second, but if you're not up for doing that, play a character, don't GM.
Yeah.
Now, that said, we all have times when in the middle of a game we slip into, I'm bored with this, so you hit. You missed. He missed. You hit. You know, everyone, that happens to everyone. But your goal is to try to not do that.
Yeah.
And if you're not up for making that effort, don't do it.
Yep. And usually it's when you get to that point, right, is you should be able to internalize that and say, hey, maybe this is where the scene stops, right? Not necessarily combat, but the narrative just needs to stop. We need to move forward now. This is ridiculous. You know, I as the GM, I should end this and, you know, move it along.
I mean, there's absolutely an upper end where you're being too verbose and you have to learn, you know, when to move things on, when to, you know, curtail what you're saying. But I think there's something to be said about, as a GM, be willing to get better at your craft. You know, obviously, if you're watching this show, you're pretty used to guys being very blunt and telling you, hey, fucker, you're doing it goddamn wrong. Do this instead. Well, you need to grow with that as well. It's not just about, hey, what am I doing wrong from an outside standpoint. You have to be able to actually look at that shit at the table and go, when was the flat spot during today's session? And not expect them to tell you. Because your players are going to lie through their fucking teeth. You're going to say, so did everybody have a good time? And they're all going to say yes.
Of course.
Well, right. I mean, most of us game with friends, right? The last thing you're going to do is go, dude, you sucked. You flat out sucked. Oh, my God, it was horrible. I was trying to slip my wrist with the sharp end of my D4. I could not fucking take it. Oh, my God. If that would have lasted another 30 minutes, I would have shoved the D4 right in my fucking eye. It was so painful. No one's going to say that to a friend. At best, they're going to go, it was okay. Here's how you can tell if as a GM. Here's how you can tell you didn't do a good job. The praise gets very short. How was it? Oh, it was good.
Yep.
And the tone goes up. It was good. It was good. Good.
Everything becomes a question, and you're just like, "Oh yeah, it was great. I had a good time."
No, how was it? Good. No, great time. No, good. Good.
No, that's true. It's the pumpkin spice latte of answers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and here's the thing too. I mean, Savage Worlds does have even the core rulebook talks to you in the game mastering session about interpreting dice rolls and kind of how to do that. I mean, it's not much of a heading, but
I was going to say it suffers from the same thing everything in the core rulebook does, and that is economy of words. They do not go into great lengths to explain in that book. And this is another place where, you know, they just assume that from those like 3 paragraphs, you're going to get how to do this.
Look, Dave, self-licking ice cream cone ads in our rulebook aren't going to fucking put themselves in the page count.
Come on, guys, we're working on a budget here. Why don't we cut half of these pronouns out?
Anyway, so your example, right, Jared, was what, 2 raises on an agility roll to do X thing?
Yeah, or just say, you got 2 raises, a success and 2 raises on an agility roll, and let's say it was running to get to the back, running after running after a carriage in a fantasy to jump up and climb onto the carriage and catch it.
Sure.
And a success. What is a success? Well, you did what you wanted to do.
Right.
So do raises equal quality of success?
But
Go ahead, Scott.
yeah, because you could do like, so off the cuff, right? Which is where I think a lot of game masters should come from, is just this natural reaction. Like you're chasing the stagecoach, you jump off. On a success, I would do it like, all right, great. You got a hold of it, but because in my head, I'm like, we need to have, maybe 2 or 3 rounds of good time with this, right? If the story follows, and like, all right, you latched onto it, but the next round, we're going to need another agility check so you can start climbing that fucker, or we're going to do some bumps and bruises, right? Just to fuck with you a little bit, right? Because that's what's going to happen, right? That's that iconic Indiana Jones moment where he succeeded, but now he's getting his ass dragged across the desert.
The success is he grabbed hold, and now he's being grabbed on the road.
Yeah, congratulations, you're following the Nazis now. Yeah, and on those bonuses, those raises, right, it really is up to the GM. You can say, okay, great, you grabbed it, you managed to grab on, you pulled your up to it, now you're on top, and now you're firmly planted yourself. So I've used the success and 2 raises, and now I'm not going to require any kind of bumps and bruises, agility roll out of you. Now I'm going to allow you to take that fucking serious next action the next turn.
See, and I think that's the step that gets lost the most in the interpreting dice. We have this long thing that has become kind of the tried and true, don't roll dice unless you and the player disagree on something. What you disagree on doesn't have to be the success. It can just be the quality of the success. Your player is of course I killed the goblin automatically. I'm legendary and it's novice. And you're like, okay, yeah, but that's not how Savage Worlds works. You might kill the goblin, but you might only just severely injure him. We need to know. Let's put some dice on the table. So, in this case, you're chasing the carriage. You roll, and you're gonna fail. And at my table, if I know, hey, the scene fucking ends if they drive off and leave you a dick in the dirt because you fell behind the carriage, then failure means you grabbed onto the tail of the fucking wagon and you're being drugged by the wagon. You automatically get a level of bumps and bruises, and now we're going to start the agility test to see if you can recover from being drugged. Success might be you're still being drugged, but you don't get that automatic level of fatigue from, diving head first after it and, pulling a muscle or however I chose to describe it when you got the level of fatigue on the failure. Then a success with a raise is you got a hold of it and pulled yourself up. I'm not going to require any additional rolls. A success in 2 raises might be not only did you grab hold of it and get up on top, but I'm going to give you the benefit of steady hands on your next action because you got to such a proper placement on it that you land where you feel as firm as if you were standing on solid ground, not moving. You can benefit a player with their raises or even allow the scene to continue in failure on the dice roll without the dice determining, oh, the scene comes to a crashing end because you failed the dice roll.
Yeah.
Well, you can do this too. So in that same example, I get a success and 3 raises. Okay, now you've got the benefit of the drop.
Yeah.
Because you did that so fucking smoothly. Nobody saw you do it. You got the drop next turn. Well, but wait a minute. I failed the roll, guys. I failed the roll to get onto the carriage. It's done, right? I mean, it's over. I failed. I didn't do it.
You can fail forward sometimes. I think that's one of the things that people don't really consider is that you go out of the frying pan into the fire. It's like, all right, so you fail and you don't manage to grab the carriage, but in the process of falling, now your jacket is hooked onto the back of the carriage and you can't grab it. So you're taking damage, and you need to figure something out, especially since that horse is coming up behind you.
So, and there's a lot of directions to take that, but I think the most interesting aspect of it is you as the GM need to decide, in that moment, what does failure mean? Does the carriage get away here, and you're going to have another scene where they have to investigate where it went, and you're going to require some tracking rolls? Or does the carriage getting away let all the air out of your game, and your players are going to be sitting there, on the side of the road with nothing to do because the carriage got away? Then you have to decide how to interpret that failure on the dice roll. Yeah. And critical failure needs to be different from regular failure. But It doesn't need to be, oh, look, you broke your leg, or oh, look, you shattered your favorite weapon, or, God, the one I see all the time, a weapon jam on double ones? Really? How boring is that as a result? Why can't that be a result occasionally when you got a success, but you happen to have a club in initiative order? So I'm going to charge you a reload action on your coming up because you had a weapon jam, a weapon malfunction. Or just as a GM, I throw that into the narrative when you get a success and not a success with a raise on a shooting roll. Oh, your weapon jammed this time. Why? Because I want to throw a complication at you at that moment to make the story more interesting. I can do that on a success. Success just means you succeeded at what you were trying to do. It doesn't mean you succeeded very well at what you were trying to do.
I had a game once, and one of my players was a weird scientist, and one of his powers was deflection, and he critically failed. He says, "Oh no, it's going to blow up." I said, "No." I said, "What happens at this point is it does the opposite. Instead of a -2 from the other side shooting at you, they get a +2 while they're shooting at you." So he was running around the battlefield, pulling bullets towards him every single time. And I feel like in some games you have to think of, what can I do that just isn't exactly standard, but is fun? Because I think the first rule, for me at least, is everybody has fun. It has to be fun.
Yeah, but Jib, then you're like pulling stuff out of your ass.
Yeah,
right?
That's a bad thing.
I mean, come on. I mean, you're not playing by the rules at that point, then, right? I mean, you're just pulling shit out of your ass.
Mm.
Oh, the GM's cheating. Oh, look at this. The GM's cheating. He's not playing by the rules. I listen. I
I'm
got
not playing by the rules.
I got a success and something bad happened. What was that again?
Who says that I'm not playing by the rules? I'm using the rules.
Yeah.
I might be using the rules to your detriment, but I'm absolutely using the rules.
Well, that's the thing, though, right? Is like some of the stuff Jason's run, and then in general, your players need to know there's no malfeasance, right? That should be the agreement at the table, and then you should let everyone know, like, hey, when you draw clubs in a firefight, you may have a weapon malfunction, right? Because it makes it more interesting. Or if you get a success in some scenes, right? Sometimes you're going to take bumps and bruises. It's just, you need to set those expectations. But like every time I start a game group or I do a session, I'm always reminding them that nothing I do to interpret the rules is going to be designed to fuck with you guys. It's to make it more dramatic and more enjoyable for your characters to progress through a story, rather than just I succeed, I fail. And failing forward isn't a new thing. We've been failing forward since Zero Edition D&D. We just didn't call it that. We just, made interpretations of the dice.
Right.
That was it.
So success with a complication.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, congratulations, your fireball goes off and it hits a target, but the fire also splashes. He also happens to be standing next to a curtain, and okay, now the entire bar is on fire. So you got what you wanted, and this happened too.
Absolutely.
As a result.
I'll be blunt. You have to be judicious in how you use this.
Sure.
Obviously there are some other game systems out there that have things like the fail forward rule or the narrative dice system, where you've got these challenge indicators that come up that add negative things to the scene. And in those game systems, you rely very heavily on the dice or these other mechanics to tell you when it's okay to introduce these negative moments. In Savage Worlds, it's entirely on your shoulders as the GM when to introduce the negative complications that make the story more interesting. And you have to own that and be completely cognizant of, oh shit, in the last 7 scenes, I beat them over the head with negative complications. Maybe they need a scene where a success is just a bloody success.
Right.
You have to be absolutely on point to hit that. Is this fun, or am I just beating them over the head with dice interpretation and making this a trudge rather than an adventure?
Well, that's the point where you have to ask, am I playing against the GM or am I playing with the GM? And
Against always.
No.
and if you really want,
smack Jared for me, please.
do what?
Somebody smack Jared for me, please.
No, I'll put it this way. Here's how I quantify that. Every time somebody hits one of my NPCs for 18 wounds, I immediately hear, "Soak that, bitch!"
To be fair, you are Jared Gunning, so
Right.
There's a bit of
you might have it
there,
coming.
of course. Go ahead.
One of the things though is it's this technique. It's called the push-pull, right? And the push-pull is that you have to have a varying degree of force and reward. And I know this is like rhetoric. This is like 101, but really a lot of people need to understand this. You cannot have every character that is in opposition to the party dominate the party. You just can't. They have to have like varying degrees. Some characters have to want to help the party. Even some of the bad guys that are really good bad guys or adversaries will try to help the party at times if it benefits them.
Wait a minute. Hold on. So what you're saying is, when you go to the blacksmith in a fantasy game to get your horse reshod, they don't spit at you and swing.
Right.
They actually, or they don't try to gouge you. They don't try to price gouge you.
Yes, because you know what? They want more customers
for all of your fucking horseshoes. Well, tell you they're selling you steel.
They don't go, "All right, I'll reshoe your horse, but you gotta do me a favor, the little quest first." Is that bad? Wait, this is mind blowing. So your characters in play can just walk up to the horse, and you can role play out that scene with the owner of the stable, and he just asks for a certain amount of money. And when they go, "We also need to board the horses," he says, "Yeah, no problem."
Yes, crazy.
And he recommends a very affordable place to bed down for the night.
He doesn't just whip out a +3 glowing, great sword and try to cut them down.
Right.
I don't know. Somehow that feels like you're doing it wrong.
Because I know your options are either that or he gives them a quest. One of the two.
Right.
There's nothing else.
Just make sure that when you describe him, you describe the yellow glowing exclamation point over his head when the character's down.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so here's I want to kind of like steer the conversation a little bit outside of Savage Worlds, because I'm going to direct this at Jib, because I know that he's very familiar tinkering wise with a little system called Apocalypse World.
I have a little bit of experience with it,
which codifies this interpretation of dice as an actual mechanic in the game as far as interpreting success or failure, right? So. Yep. Not necessarily to bring that into Savage Worlds as a setting rule. I'm not recommending that at all. But what is the de facto ruling of dice interpretations for not pass fail in Apocalypse World?
In an Apocalypse World game, the base mechanic is you roll 2 6-sided dice and you add something to it. If you get a 10 or better, fine, no problem. It happens exactly the way you want it to happen. If you get a 7 to a 9, you do the thing, but there's some complication. Something that makes life a little more difficult for you. If you get a 6 or lower,
you hop on your bike and ride.
Things go more significantly bad. Okay? And we can do the same thing in Savage Worlds. Oh. You didn't get a success on that. Would you like to? No, you don't have to spend a penny. No problem. No, you don't have to spend the money on that. But there's going to be a cost to it. And no, I'm not necessarily going to tell you the cost before you agree to it. What I will tell you is that the cost is probably not ever going to be fatal to you anyway. is they get to move the story forward the way they wanted to, but there's going to be a problem involved.
Okay, so like even on a failure in Apocalypse World, you get what you wanted, just not the way you wanted it. Or you get what you wanted and something else.
On a 6-, you're either not going to get what you wanted, or the thing that you wanted to have happen is going to happen, but there's going to be a significant cost.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I'm trying to do something like I'm trying to scale a wall in Savage Worlds. I don't have the climbing skill. I make an unskilled climbing check. I've got no bennies left, and I get a 3. So, do I scale the wall, and just suffer a level of bumps and bruises as a result of doing it? Like, let's talk about like succeeding or success with or failure with or failing an actual die roll in Savage Worlds. Is there a degree where if a near success, you give it to them with a complication?
Again, this goes back to that whole, it's as the GM, you have to know when to push and when to pull. And a 3 on the dice roll, they're climbing a wall, maybe they're one level below success, and by this, I mean, maybe they've had to make other dice rolls to get to the point where they're right at the wall, and that 4 was going to get them over the top on, either onto the wall or whatever. The 3 maybe results in them continuing to hang on the side of the wall. They've got a good grip. They were already on the wall. They don't fall off the wall, but they fail to achieve the goal of getting on top of the wall.
Okay.
Whereas, or maybe they get on top of the wall and drop something they needed.
Right.
Yeah. Or they scamper up there, but they lost their climbing harness. Or
you scamper up, you get over the wall, and when you land in front of 2 guards exchanging a wine skin.
Right. And you knock it out of their hand.
Yeah, you make it fun.
And then you make your persuasion roll, take the wine skin out of their hand, take a drink. So how's watch going?
Right? And that would be a Benny move. Like, I would immediately give a Benny move to someone who could think that quickly on their feet after me presenting them like, you did the wall, but you fucked it up.
And the interesting thing is,
the bottom line, though,
none of us took away their weapon. None of us injured the player character. We didn't violate any of the tenets of what could happen in the situation by interpreting that dice roll in 4 different ways.
Right, but most players in most games are used to, most GMs as well, like, okay, well, I'm scaling a 3-story stone wall.
Right.
I'm doing it without a harness, so I'm in a -1. I got no rope or no tools to do it, so I'm free climbing. Okay, so I'm in a -1 or -2. Ah, shit. I missed a success by 1. And I don't have any bennies left. And the benny goes, all right, how much damage do I take from the fall? It's just the automatic go-to place, right? I think what we're kind of recommending here is the Indiana Jones failure, where I almost did the starting scene in the Temple of Doom in Shanghai, where he's meeting with the basically bringing him the jewel. Mm-hmm. And they end up poisoning him. That thing where he's reaching for the antidote, but then he doesn't.
Ice or
and then it knows the diamond mixed in with the ice, and now somebody else wants what he's looking for. Oh, chaos is happening in the room. So it's not necessarily a failure. It's just missed it by that much.
I kind of want to play off that example though, Jared. That is a great scene because he goes through the whole scene and you think he's won, you think he got away. He literally taunts the guy, closes the door, and what does it say?
It's his name of the airline. Yeah. Right.
And it's like, buddy, remember when you failed that first roll? This is what happens.
That cascade effect of we kept rolling this forward and progressively the bad became worse and worse to the point your plane's going to crash into a mountain.
Right. But too, it's judicious use of skills, right? Like we talked about this before. Is like don't use climbing just to do normal shit, and that normal has a variance. Like and this is a problem with a lot of people who game is that they don't have a point of knowledge for a lot of things. So like climbing, like Jared said, I don't have a harness and I don't have requisite tools and it's a climb up a wall. Okay, well, I'm a free climber, so I don't need a harness and I don't need tools. I need bare hands and soft shoes, and I'm going to get up the fucking wall, right? I don't require any of that shit. And there are free climbers who can do that. There are free climbers who can climb inverted, right? So you have to be able to vary those degrees and be like, if this is a thief who's specializing in burglaries, he's a second story man, don't apply those penalties because the guy's already an expert in doing the thing.
Right.
Well, and I think you have to be, like you said, is judicious. You have to be judicious in it. You know, there are edges that allow you to not take the lack of tools penalty. If you take the MacGyver edge, you just ignore all penalties for lack of tools. If you want to be a free rock climber, maybe that's a game where you want to have skill specialization in the game, and under climbing you have free climbing, and you don't take a penalty for lack of tools when you don't have a climbing mean harness, but you do take a penalty for lack of tools when you don't have the appropriate chalk and shoes and those things that are necessary for that activity. That's where I think that whole judicious part of it comes in. And unfortunately, and this is just going to be a majorly fun thing for me to say, because the internet's going to love this one. This is where the modern GM isn't as good as we were 40 years ago. When the hobby first came out, everyone playing in this hobby was at a scholar level of intellect and training. The guys who invented this game were fucking geniuses and had gone to a lot of college training. And they knew a lot about a lot of different things. So they could, on the fly, describe these things very well. Today, you've got freaking... I've played with 8-year-olds at the table. I've played with people who are literally drooling half the time. The hobby has gone mass market, and because of that, you don't...
Why can't you bring that up?
Jib, I know. We agreed we wouldn't talk about that in public. But
fuck you. I could Google that shit.
But the fact of the matter is, you can't depend on your players to have that knowledge. And as a GM, unfortunately, it's your job to have that knowledge. You have to, like Jim always says, immerse yourself in the culture and genre that you're going to be running that game in so that you can automatically come up with that information on the fly at the table.
Well, and I think part of the judicious application of the rules, like Scott was talking about, is also you have to include a sense of fairness in that as well. Like, okay, so let's go back to the wall climbing episode example. I've got a character who has no skill in climbing a wall, and I've got a character who's got a D6, and it is a stone wall with lots of outcropping stone. There are a lot of handholds and footholds all the way up the side of that bitch. The character with the D6 climbing, I'm not putting any penalties on him for not having a rope. Yeah. He knows what he's doing. I mean, he's skilled enough in climbing that, okay, he shouldn't need a rope unless he's trying to, scale a completely smooth surface. All right, then fine. He's fine. The other guy, even though he's doing it unskilled and doesn't have a rope, I'm not imposing a -4 on him because, goddamn, he's already got a -2 because he's got no skill. This isn't me as a GM trying to make sure that the character who shouldn't be able to do what he's trying to do just because he hasn't spent the points can't do it. I'm not stacking the deck against the character trying to make the unskilled roll. But at the same time, I want to be fair to the setting and a little bit to physics and reality as far as what's going on.
Player who did take those skills.
Right.
It's not fair of me to say that the guy who has a D4 -2 in this particular thing we're trying
has the same chance.
Penalties and whatnot as the guy who has the D6 in it and has the climbing harness and the pitons and the whole 9 yards. Reward the players for what they found important for the game as well.
Right, and if this is a big moment, don't leave it to a single skill roll either. Dramatic task. I mean, it's. I think part of dice interpretation, well, part of what we're talking about in a whole, you kind of have to talk about picking up the right rule in Savage Worlds to run it as well, not just what the dice interpret. But we've kind of had that discussion before.
Speaking
also,
of which,
if they throw a fucking ladder up next to the building, or somebody got up to the top and drops down a rope that's firmly secured at the top, that's not a climbing roll.
Right. There's a ladder on the side of the choo-choo train that you're trying to get on. I'm not making you make a climbing roll after I make you agility roll to jump off the back of your galloping steed to get on the train. That agility roll is not followed by, well, give me a climbing roll to -2 for unstable penalty. Let's see what other dickery things I can do to you that are within the rules. You're making a -8. Go, bitch.
Well, that's it too, right? Like you can still have the good climber and an unskilled climber and not drop all those stupid fucking penalties on the unskilled climber and still honor the skills, right? By saying, all right, look, normally you'd be at a -4 because you got no gear to do this, but you have someone trained who's going to talk you the way up, just like it happens in movies, and you just move the fucking scene on if the die rolls are adequate and they're appropriate. It's really simple as fuck.
So I know we've had this conversation before. Let's talk about the narrative and dice interpretation when it comes to combat. The whole, and I think I'm not sure who. I know Jib's been a big proponent of don't describe the damage, wait for it, or okay, describe up to the point where you make the roll to see if you actually hit the fucker before you. I pull my sword, I charge into battle, and I say, "Oh, in the name of the gods," and blah blah blah, and I run him through. Okay, make your roll. Oh,
Wait.
You completely
No,
missed.
roll some dice. Oh, wow, you got a 2. So tell me how you missed. Explain that to me. What'd that look like?
It got quiet.
Yeah, I got real quiet. I don't know.
Wow.
So,
I think he was done.
I thought Jib was. I thought there was more coming. It's also let's talk about this too. Like the whole. Who owns the narrative? Yeah, I guess is my question.
Oh
fuck. Well, hold on. Hear me out. Hear me out. I can see Dave going. Shut up, Dave. Hear me out. There's a lot of players when you go, tell me what happens. They go, fuck you. You're the GM. That's your job.
You dance, monkey.
Dance, monkey, dance.
Right.
So, and then what do you do if you have okay? So, you get 3 raises in damage. So you get the plus, you get the mechanical +6 for your attack roll raise, and you go ahead and roll that shit. But then we described that you do 4 wounds. Now, do I allow you as the player to describe that when I'm about to make a soak roll after you make that description and have it not happen?
No, you do all the rolls first, and then you do the narrative.
Okay.
We've talked about this.
I'm playing devil's advocate. Understand, we have new people shuffling in all the time. So, so let's explain why that's important. Because in Savage Worlds, there's this mechanic called basically, haha, not today, where I get to soak all the damage.
Yes,
now that doesn't mean the damage didn't happen. That doesn't mean it doesn't invalidate the attack or the successes. It just means, nope, I have no wound penalties. So that can be very tricky for somebody as a newbie GM or a newbie player to kind of wrap their head around when we go to interpret what effect the dice have on the game. So I get an attack roll raise, I roll my extra damage, and bam, I hit you for 5 wounds. That point right there, is that the point where I want to describe what the damage does? Or do I want to go, pause? Are you making a soak roll? Yeah, let's see how you do.
I feel like you're fucking with Jim.
Yeah, you have to wait for all of the dice to be resolved in that event before you describe the results.
Well, because I know a lot of people have a problem with, well, wait a minute. I did 4 wounds. They dropped a Benny, soaked all of it. So what does that mean? That means that they never took any of the damage, that my attack didn't happen? I got an attack roll raise. And nothing?
You tell me. How did they avoid your attack? You tell me.
But they didn't avoid your attack. They sidestepped the damage.
How they avoided getting hurt.
Don't ever take away the hit because of a successful soak.
See, this is why I wanted to talk about this. Go ahead.
And so I don't think the rule of describe nothing till all dice rolls are done necessarily is 100% foolproof. I think you absolutely can do some description between roll to hit, roll for damage. There's room there. You rolled 8 fucking raises on your shooting roll as a sniper. I'm going to describe that bullet in flight as if we're, rewinding the movie Wanted, and you get to see the bullet arc through the laundromat, go through the open car window, come out the other car window, go through the guy's donut, snip off somebody's cigarette, and then as it drills straight in on the and stop right there, roll damage. Now we know what happens. Oh, it was drilling straight in on, and somebody hit him, and it grazes along his cheek. Nicks his ear, there's a huge blood spurt, and he drops out of sight. That's a hit for no wounds that actually caused 4 wounds that were all soaked.
Yeah, and it makes for a great follow-on to a villain that you may think you've just killed. Right, depending on how you're running the game.
Yeah. The players, got this big, huge, successful headshot, and they literally see the blood spray as it hits him in the face, and out of screen he goes, only to show up in the 3rd act and be a real badass motherfucker with a giant scar and a hate relationship for the players.
So let's talk about what do you guys do when you fail a notice roll? Do you give the players meta information? I like to give I love to give characters. Okay, here's what happens. You think that is this. So we just had it in a game recently, right? Where there's a trunk full of bricks of heroin, and I got a character who's clueless about anything criminal, like just clueless. Tip the clueless headers. Give me a smart. Give me your common knowledge roll. -2 fails the roll. Goes okay. You know what? Yep. You're concerned. That is C4. Those are that is C4.
Fucking
you're sure of it.
To the goddamn hilt. He role played his character thinking what he as a player knew was a trunk full of heroin was C4, and he even went a little further and he role played it as if it was a trunk full of nitroglycerin.
Nice.
Like his character, because his character's clueless. He doesn't know C4 is inert when it's just laying around and can't be set off by like a hammer. So he role played his character didn't know those things about C4 and thought it was like the most dangerous fucking substance on the world.
So the character got 2 bennies, one for his hindrance when he made the roll, and then one later on for really sticking that landing and role playing it the fuck out.
And you see what and there's again another way of resolving this is, and I know Jib probably will agree with this. I think we see this more in Fate and Powered by the Apocalypse games. Is that the trendy thing now is to talk about the game as if it were a movie. And in that instance, a lot of times you would be able to do, or you would hear from actual players from specifically those 2 systems, is that as you're trying to look for the heroin dealers, in the distance, the camera pans around on a face shot on you, and in the distance, you see the truck pull out of the alley behind you, loaded with the heroin, driving off in the distance. They give it away, but they expect the players not to act on that information and to continue down the one path.
I think that works great if that's the player you have. Some players, though, they want that first-person perspective from their character to be the description they're getting. They don't want the movie camera pan idea.
Well, I remember that we had this discussion. Jamie came on a couple of weeks back, maybe even a couple of months back, and we were discussing the whole issue of, do you know there's a bomb on the car?
And ninjas.
Okay. And ninjas.
Yeah, we talked about that as far as notice. Yeah.
Do you keep driving even though, like, the GM has told you, give me a notice check to spot the bomb under the car? Well, you put your player in this weird situation where they either have to metagame because they know and they're playing a game and they don't want their character to die, or you have to get them to the point where, well, you failed the notice check, but you as a player know, but your character doesn't.
But you don't design the scene to kill them. I think that's what people fail to realize. You need the trust there that you're going to turn the key, but it's not going to go off. There'll be a loud spark and a poof of smoke, and that will be your indicator, like, oh my God, I almost fucking died. Like, there's different ways of going about that.
What I would do is, like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Casino, but he turns it and it blows up, but he's got a metal plate under the seat because that's the model of the car.
Yep.
So the guy falls out of the car horribly injured, but the people who are trying to kill him think, oh, he's dead because the bomb went off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Make it a plot point.
Yeah.
So, and Jason Chapman jumped into chat and said if they fail the notice roll, they don't notice anything. And quite honestly, if that's the route you want to go as a GM, you can, but I think you are absolutely doing it wrong. Because that failure needs to be just as interesting as the success would have been. Not seeing something is not interesting. Seeing a red herring, spotting something else that distracts you so that you don't see the thing, even if it's unimportant. You know, they make their we did the whole film noir. You're searching the desk in the dark, trying to find the clue, and they fail the notice roll. And what they spot is the flashlight that went across the door, and it made them look up. And because they stopped rifling the desk and looked up, they missed the clue. But you still gave them something narratively that was interesting to cue on. You've got to give them something as a player to be interested in and keep that game flowing. The failure needs to be just as fun and interesting as success, even if it introduces a new challenge.
Well, and here's the other thing too, like with that, let's say I failed the notice roll. I think that is a little two-dimensional thinking. Notice has more to do with what I see. I can fail the notice roll and hear.
Yep.
I can hear a rustling in the bush. I don't need to see it. So a failure can be I hear a rustling in the bush. The failure can be, as Dave was saying, a red herring. Oh, you see glowing eyes peering at you through the forest, and you're certain it is a wild beast. It turns out it's an owl. In reality, you don't have. Here's the thing: on a failure, as a GM, you can lie to the players for gravitas. Go ahead, lie to them because they failed to notice roll. They don't see what's really there.
And remember, you're not lying to the player in the, hey, Jib, we're going to play on Thursday next week instead of Wednesday. I'm talking about that kind of
I'm not talking about being passive aggressive. I'm talking about saying.
You're talking about you can tell players the thing their character thinks they saw.
Right.
Or the thing their character did see, but because they didn't see the other more important
or
thing.
what they heard. And okay, and here's the other thing too. While we're talking about notice and fucking perception rules, when everybody else, when he fails and everybody else starts going, oh, I want to make a notice. No, fuck you.
Right.
The answer is no, fuck you. You don't get to no. Not everybody gets to fucking pile on. I asked for a notice roll from Bob because Bob is at the back of the line. He's the one that would notice it. That's why I called for a notice roll from Bob. Can I make a notice roll? No, because I didn't.
The last guy in the turn order declares he's going to search the room, and everyone wants a cooperative roll.
Right.
Sorry, you're
already taking.
Can I help with that? Can I assist with that? I help.
Yeah, I've got investigation. Can I make it? No, you already took your action. No, you're in another fucking room. You have no idea he's about to do that. No.
I got a point there. It's like you can always ask the player, does it make sense if you are assisting?
Yeah.
And if they stumble over.
The highest notice so they can be the leader of the cooperative role. No,
Right.
Who declared they were searching for the shit first?
Right.
That's the leader of the notice roll.
So I'm kind of wondering if we can like branch on one of the topics that's come up in one of my games. In cooperative roles, your cap is a +4. That came up in my Tuesday night game because we were assisting. Yeah.
Isn't that rules is written?
Yeah. Why?
It was written.
Okay, so you're just enforcing the rule.
Yeah.
So why is and I just so you can vocalize this, and so like Jared said, there may be a new dragon can or whatever watching today. Why is that capped out at 4?
Because I think in most situations 4 is the success. And here's one of the things we probably need to discuss is that the negative comes from the overall, and the positive is just the benefit. Is that the case? Are we looking at like a sliding algebra scale? Like if you get like +6, you can only get a 4 for a success, but the negatives, does that apply? Does it always sort of even out?
What's also the physicality of the action, right? What was the situation when this cooperative roll was made?
Oh, over Tuesday, on the Tuesday night game?
Yeah.
So we
No, I want to hear about the Thursday night game.
The Thursday night game.
I'll be a dick.
Keep going. Don't let him derail you.
I'll be the dick. Go ahead.
I do have a Thursday night game. That's why you only see me every other week. But on the Tuesday night game, what happened was we had a player that was he was a survivalist and he was a tracker, and he was trying to find poachers.
Okay.
And our plan was we were going to make fake tracks to sort of lure the poachers into the area.
Okay.
And in the process of doing that, I was playing a mad scientist or weird scientist, and I created the device. And that's how I was aiding him, is I was creating the device that he was going to use to try and act like the animal.
Okay.
And that was, yeah.
Go ahead.
And I rolled pretty well. Like, we're talking like multiple explosions.
Sure.
And we had to like do the rolls. We had to do the rules to look at it to see that it caps out at +4.
That's for the entire cooperative task too. That's not just for everybody's roll. That's the maximum bonus you can get is a +4.
Yeah, and so something about physicality. If you think about that situation, right? So you're trying to make these fake tracks against poachers who are trained to spot animal tracks, right?
Right.
At some point, if we allowed you to have like a party of 20 make fake tracks, suddenly those beaver tracks aren't looking so fucking beaverish, right? Now it looks like mayhem and people running around the woods making fake tracks.
Right. It looks like Beaver Apocalypse.
Right. You just got to take the physicality of the action into question.
There's this perfect trail of beaver tracks.
Yeah.
You know, field of trampled snow.
Right.
Well,
there's a whole fucking empire of beaver suddenly.
Yeah. There's another layer to cooperative roles too, and that is same skill.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You have to actually be trained in the skill. You can't make an unskilled cooperative roll.
Right. So let's say, okay, we're going to do a boating roll. Okay, can somebody do me a boating roll to plot a course from here to Spain, from the Florida Keys to Spain? Okay, here steps up the captain. He's got boating D6. He goes to make that roll. Everybody piles on. I've got knowledge maps. Go fuck yourself. I've got notice. Go fuck yourself. Unless you have boating, you're not making this cooperative roll.
Yeah. So that's the question. Did you have?
Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to cover that.
Also, you have to narrate to me how you're helping.
Exactly.
I don't know to say you're helping. You have to tell me how.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 players grabbing the main wheel at once.
Well, and that's where we get back to the physicality of the task too. There's only so many ways you can help with a driving roll, but if it's like search the room and everyone's going to be doing a cooperative notice roll to search the room, fuck that shit. Turn it into a dramatic task. Each player in the party gets 1 roll as a round of that dramatic task, and see how they can do as a group effort. Get away from the cooperative roll, because that's not the way the players are suddenly structuring what they want to do. And it's going to feel really shitty if player 4 rolls 9 successes, but because he was only the cooperator, he only gets to add +4 to player 5's roll. Instead, you've turned it into a dramatic task, and player 4 just fucking succeeded on the dramatic task for the whole party. He got all the successes necessary. The only thing they need is for player 5 not to draw a complication and then get a failure on the complication, which fails the entire dramatic task.
Well, and I could. This is not rules as written, so I'm going to put that out there for anybody listening. Not rules as written. But what happens when you fail on the cooperative roll? Does it add a negative?
See, and again,
Shouldn't it?
not rules as
Should
written.
it?
But
Yeah, should it?
absolutely fucking should. If somebody fails hard on their cooperative roll, then they gave the leader bad information.
Yep.
They said, "Hey, come look over here," where they had a field of red herrings.
Guys, yeah.
So I roll a 2 on my cooperative survival roll, and guess what? I laid down the tracks perfectly, and then hey, well, I'm all done here. Then walked right through them.
Right. That might actually have been something that would have happened with that group.
Or I created what I thought were footprints that looked like a beaver and put them on the end of sticks, but they really look like a rabbit. Or I did what I thought looks like a beaver. Turns out I don't know shit about beavers, so I'm way off.
It's like, why is a beaver in the desert? It's a desert beaver. Oh.
Trying to think if there's any more ground we want to kind of cover on interpreting dice rolls.
Fucking narrate failure. Jesus goddamn Christ. Failure should be interesting. Yes, it's all well and good. You see that giant 4 raises at the table, and you come up with this really blazing goddamn description of how they did the pirouette off the thing and the backflip and stars shot out of their ass and there was rainbow honey fucking crisp everywhere. I don't fucking care. When they get a failure, they deserve the same florid description. It just results in failure rather than success. Stop just going, and you failed. Because you want to talk about something that takes the air out of the game. You built up all this tension and failed. Is all you say? The fuck? How did they fail?
Okay, so
what happened?
Let's do this interestingly. So let's say that you go. Your idea is to sneak up behind the guard and attack him and kill him, or somehow subdue him, so you can sneak into the castle under the cover of night.
So we're talking about that final inch or whatever rule where they have to make an additional.
Well, here's what I'm talking about. Whether it's the final inch, whatever it happens to be, and if anybody is a fan of the 1980s TV show Sledgehammer, they're going to understand exactly where this came from. So they sneak up behind him. They had a drop and they still fail. At that point, here's what happens with the failure. You hit the guy clock him over the head, and he proceeds to scream, "Ow! Ow! Ow!" like he's his own goddamn alarm. It has the exact opposite effect of what you were trying to do, but in a situationally humorous and appropriate way.
Well, you also have just that moment, because you get all these guys who've watched all the fucking, amazing military movies, and they narrate their characters stepping in. They reach around, they put their hand over the guy's mouth, they turn his head sideways, and they drive the K-bar under his chin into his fucking brain. And then you narrate that they do all of that, but instead their hand slips, and they drive the knife into the helmet strap. And now they're stuck just holding this guy who's now aware of them and very pissed off.
Right? Yeah, I'd agree. Look for the interesting or the humorous in failure and bring it to bear. You also have to, part of that, and this is kind of steps a little bit outside of interpretation, but I would say you also have to bring consequences to bear on success as well. If it has an impact in your game or in your story logically. Like,
I totally agree.
Just murdering the captain of the guard, if that's what you're attempting to do. Oh yeah, you got 5 successes. Oh no, you killed the fuck out of him.
Murdering the hell out of him.
You not only killed him, you killed him, brought him back, killed him again, brought him back to life, and killed him again.
And
made his children watch. I mean, that fucker is dead. Not mostly dead, all the way fucking dead.
I'm going to tell you this. That works out really well if you're running a supers game. If you're doing like 4-color and there's just this mugger, just this regular human being who snatches someone's purse and runs, and you obliterate that guy with your eye beams or you throw a car at him, suddenly nobody really cares about that mugger. Like, there is something called like
you just murdered someone in cold blood, or better yet, you threw someone else's car.
With them in it.
It's like in a supers game, you're like, okay, you got like a couple hundred raises. What do you do? It's like I run up there and grab him. I'm like, okay, you pull his arm off.
What?
Well, okay.
You're a demigod, man.
I'm going to disagree a bit because, okay, when you succeed, when you got those 3 raises on the success, on the attack, you got what you wanted.
Oh, absolutely. This is not to say that you should penalize them in they got 100 raises, so they ripped the guy's arms off when they didn't want to.
Right.
Or when I saw Jared do, it's been a while, but Jared had a player character who narrated that he bit somebody, bite his fucking hand near off, like just completely rips out all the veins of the wrist, just annihilates this guy's fucking arm with his teeth. You know, at some point you have now exceeded what the player was trying to achieve.
Well, and that also now let's talk about that, right? Because that had a very big impact on the story at the time, because it was the worst possible thing that could have fucking happened. And
which should happen on the double ones, not on the 9 successes.
Right. And it was with a character who was not a combat character, who was not used to being involved in any kind of fights or anything like that. Just, girded up his loins, stepped into his big boy pants, and went, "Fuck this shit. I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna rumble and get in. I'm gonna mix it up."
Like 8
and just grabbed this guy, just basically slit his wrist with a bite out of his wrist, essentially. Just sitting there gnawing, and he was playing it at the time that he was just fucking frantic, high adrenaline rush, pissed over the situation. So I mean, it ends up working, but
I think that is absolutely something that Jib's right about. Don't take away from the player what they wanted to achieve, but there can be some consequences to their actions. The same character in Dustin's example, who rolled a 3, a failure, missed by 1. Maybe he grabs hold of the guy and rips his arms off. But 100 successes, no way. That guy absolutely had a perfect feather touch when he grabbed him and everything.
Yeah.
He might be comparatively grabbing the guy. That's different.
Yeah, you get 4 successes. You pulled it off like a boss, exactly the way you wanted to do it, with all the skill and joie de vivre. Yeah.
Yep.
You did what to vivre?
The player agrees that their character ripped the guy's arms off.
I said savoir faire joie de vivre.
I gotcha.
That's certain. I don't know something.
That's a je ne sais quoi to that phrase.
What did you fucking call me? Here's another example too. I'm going to defuse the bomb. Okay, so we do this dramatic task, and the player character goes all 5 rounds and ends up at the end netting like 10 successes. Let's talk about this for a second too, because we don't really often talk about this when it comes to dramatic tasks. But he just sails through every round, no complications, multiple successes on every turn of the card. Dude, you not only disarmed that shit, it is in factory condition. You knew exactly what wire to snip, where to snip it. You could
rearm it, use it later.
Yeah, you could rearm it and use it later if you want. Great, you succeeded. Now here's the real world consequence. Yeah, that was placed by a high ranking terrorist organization, and when that bomb doesn't go off, they start investigating why that bomb didn't fucking go off. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, even a success, a great success can have a narrative complication or tail on it.
In all honesty, if someone can defuse their bomb that well, they probably want that guy to work for them.
Well, just remember,
it doesn't have to be negative. Terrorists are what?
They're always watching.
Yeah.
They have to film in order to get more funding.
Right.
It's true.
No,
Too true.
So let's talk about the dramatic task and talk about levels of success with that, because interpreting that as a overall dice roll. For those of you who are not familiar with dramatic tasks, let's just go through them very quickly. You make a skill roll for that appropriate and germane to that task. You're trying to defuse a bomb. It may be a smarts roll every time. It may be repair. Knowledge demolition may be required. If you're trying to, whatever you're trying to do, pick the appropriate skill trait to test for it. Every round, you basically draw a card and you make that skill roll. If the card comes up a club, oops, there's a little wrinkle in that part and you have to get over past that complication in order to continue. If you don't, it ends. On the example we were using, you get to round 3, you have 5 rounds, 5 card draws, 5 dice rolls to net 5 successes. So you can roll a 4 on your first roll, an 8 on your second roll, and you've got 3 successes. Right? You only need 5 by the time the last card is drawn. If you get a complication, you can pull a club of any card, a club, and bam, we have this complication. Oh shit! The earth just moved under your feet. Your sweat dripped off your forehead, landed on your tool, and you feel your tool slipping out of your hand. Give me an agility roll to hold on to your tool. Oh, okay, you fail that agility roll. Guess what? Good night. We're done. Here's what happens. It slips out of your hand and bridges the contact, and the bomb accelerates, and you watch it go from 3 minutes to 0, and boom, it goes off in your face. Now, what Dave was saying is, even if you get 5 successes by your first or second round, shut up, Dave. I see that face. We're not making a sexual pun. Knock it off. I didn't say it bricks.
Clearly, you're watching chat.
No, but you were talking about your slippery tool a little while ago.
That is true. That is true. Yeah, I got to consider the source. Consider the audience.
You're a military man in this call.
Now,
no, slippery tools only have one.
Okay, so you could get to the 4th round in the dramatic task. You don't stop the dramatic task because you have 5 successes. That's key. You still continue.
Rules is written, son.
You still continue. So you could have 8 successes going in, get to that final round, pull a complication, fuck it up, boom, end of dramatic task, bad news all day long. So how do you grade, or how do you narrate the individual rounds in a dramatic task and interpret those dice rolls in the context of what we're talking about tonight? Not only as individual rounds or interpretation of dice rolls, but as a whole for dramatic task.
Well, and I think the important aspect is to start with, make sure you're narrating every dice roll in a dramatic task. The whole term, dramatic task, means there needs to be some drama during this task.
No, it means give me your repair roll. Oh, okay, that's 3 successes towards 5.
Narration, and it's just, it's a queen. Give me a roll. Okay, that's a success.
Right.
Oh, with that, it's a deuce. Give me a roll. Oh, it's a success. Oh, it's a club. -2 to your roll to whatever you were doing. This round only. Give me your roll. You've just lost your players.
Take inspiration on the
narration turns it into an undramatic task. Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, sorry. So you're doing dramatic tasks or anything, you can take inspiration from the chase, right? The suit and the hierarchy of the cards means something, and you can do that with dramatic tasks. I know it's not rules as written, but people can get used to that. If you draw a king or a queen or a jack or an ace, you can make that mean something in your narration, right? Instead of just going with the flow.
Right. I think it's a good tip as a GM when you see it come up as a face card versus just a regular, 10 of diamonds or whatever towards a dramatic task. Have it mean something spectacular.
Sure.
But the thing is, you got to remember you're putting together consecutive and congruent contiguous successes. It's kind of have to make sense. It still has to kind of make sense. You can't well, I don't know. I guess you can do whatever you want, but
it should be inspiration. That's all.
Yeah, it should make sense as far as what you're narrating.
In all honesty, going off of what Scott's saying, like things can be distractions to you. Like if you're defusing a bomb and you come up with hearts, you can suddenly think about, oh gosh, this could kill my loved ones. Or if you come up with diamonds, you can say your character's thinking about what the damage is going to cost, Or clubs is like, I'm going to die. Like, I could die. It can be an internal dialogue or an internal monologue that the characters are having in their heads. Things that you notice, like hearts. You see a woman clutching her baby and you start sweating. Or diamonds, you think, you know what? I could. There's a luxury car right over there. I could jump in the window and just drive, and I might make it.
So this is something I'm going to throw out there. We can't tell you what the special thing is you need to insert into each one of these rounds is. That is perhaps the hardest thing, because you have to do it on the fly at the table based on what happened in the previous round and where you're going in the next round. And as a GM, if you don't know those things, if you don't know what they've done and where you're trying to go in the next scene, you can't effectively tell them what the special thing is that happens. There's a great example. Scott mentioned the chase earlier, where Clint lays out this fantastic chase scene where the boats are twisting down this twisting river, and there's branches and there's rapid turns, and the branch is in the way because they got the bad range card or whatever that stopped them from being able to attack. That's because as a GM, this is a jungle river, and they just came around a sharp bend, and now when they draw that next card, you can feed off of, they just came off of a sharp turn, and now there's a sharp turn in the opposite direction. Now you've got something to narrate, because you know where they are coming from and where they're going. But I can't tell you that in advance as advice as a GM. All I can tell you is be prepared to think on your feet and add something special every time it's your turn to narrate something to your players. Add something that adds, interest and drama to the thing. Their weapon jams, the deflector shields are starting to fritz out, and they need to, cross-wire the data dish into it. I don't fucking care. Come up with something appropriate to your specific scenario you're running at the time that makes sense within the game you're trying to have your players experience, or key off of some of the shit they're saying. Your players will give you all kinds of ideas at the table if you just take the time to listen.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's not really I guess, not a special thing, but use them as cues, right, to maintain a good flow and increase your narrative game. Because even in movies, you'll see that sine wave when they're trying to defuse a bomb and they're doing something crazy. And you can interpret that of like, okay, well, they're drawing 2s and 3s and 5s. Okay, fantastic. So, yeah, you're a little bit of brow sweat. You realize the intensity of the moment. Okay, there's a queen. All right, well, shit, they're going to draw a queen. So when it comes around to narrate that point, because not everyone's going to be defusing the bomb, you can do like Dustin said, or, like Dave said, to say, okay, well, yeah, the height of the battle, the din of the noise is starting to crush on you. You're really starting to feel it. You can power through this. And all it is using those as cues to be like, all right, man, I can use that as a pace setter for me personally.
Right. Now, here's one of the interesting things you can do with dramatic tasks, especially if you've got a group of 5 people. You happen to have 5 players at the table. Turn that dramatic task into a group montage, with each player having a specific role or part in this overall dramatic montage. Okay, Dr. Mastermind has placed a bomb at Wrigley Field, and it's going to go off in the third quarter. Okay, so one character, the face guy, I'll empty the stadium. I'll evacuate the stadium because, goddamn, I'm persuasive. Okay, so he gets to make a persuasion roll in dramatic task. Another character, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Let each one of them sort of plan what their role is in that overall arcing montage. But whoever is disarming the bomb, let them go last. So, you know what I'm saying? You could use the dramatic task as a montage. Other player characters can be involved in it. If you're doing a shadow run thing, and we've done this in actual play, where the hacker's initiative card in the combat is his role in a dramatic task to hack the mainframe, while all of his buddies are fighting in their turn order. The hacker's initiative order in the card turn order is his next card in the dramatic task. Feel free to take the rules and bend them, mold them, combine them, push them together for what makes sense for you and what works in your game.
Yeah, I mean, shit, you really want to get snappy. You make a fucking face card, provide a bonus to the next action. Right?
Sure, +1.
Yeah, who cares, right?
It doesn't matter what the specific thing you do is, but make it more interesting. And
right.
That's that big thing. The deck of cards operates as this external force that when a Joker comes up, we all get more excited.
Right. It will break immersion.
When a face card comes up, we all get more excited than we do when we get a deuce. And when a deuce comes up, you fucking feel shitty as goddamn all hell.
Unless you got Betty's for an I win button.
When the fifth deuce comes up in the same task or the same combat, and you go, Jesus, I know we had to reshuffle for that Joker, but goddamn it, 5 deuces, really? You know, at some point, there is that moment where those things have to feed into the narrative so that you can show it's been nothing but deuces, it's all dire. Or it's been nothing but clubs. Every round is a complication. Things are going from bad to goddamn worse with every step of that dramatic task. Key off of those external things.
The card faces count in every other aspect of Savage Worlds. Combat, a queen matters more than a 3.
Mm-hmm.
A chase, a king matters more than a 6. Right? Just use the system for what it's already designed.
Well, yeah. Well, like Dave was saying earlier, why shouldn't clubs in a firefight mean a weapons jam?
Absolutely. Why not? I mean, just they're fucking they're setting rules, you know?
Exactly.
Totally could. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but then there's always and the other thing too that cards could do as far as what Dave is talking about as far as the narrative. God damn, really? The GM's NPCs keep out. We're going through 3 rounds of combat and their first or second turn order in all 3 rounds of combat. Fuck. Or the opposite. The GM keeps drawing 2s and 3s and 5s. And everybody else. Fuck the NPCs.
Cheating.
Yeah, the NPCs are going fucking last every turn. Fuck. Yeah. What's going on? Oh, well, their commander's incredibly brand new. He's a lieutenant. Everything's fucking disorganized.
Right. And you're going to be able to use that, right? That's what we're talking about. He's used those low draws for your narration in that situation. That'd be perfect. Be like, oh my God, they're going, everyone gets excited. Like, oh, the enemies keep going last. Fuck you guys. They suck. And you could do that. Be like, yeah, man, you can see them looking at each other. They're in a fucking firefight. Bags are dropping out of their fucking handguns because they keep grabbing they keep monkey fucking the grip and fucking accidentally disengaging the magazine safety release. Sure. Lieutenant is yelling nonsense at them. Yeah, you absolutely could use the shit to make your game better.
Right. All right. Well, I think we've sufficiently turned this horse to glue. So, unless we have anything else in the chat room, you got anything in the chat room there, intern?
Nothing really. No.
Unpredictability.
Right. Yeah. No. Nothing really.
All right. Well, then, until next time, this is Jared Savage, Daddy Gunning for Dave, Dustin, Jib, and Scott saying keep rolling and stay savage.